All right. Welcome everyone to the Flux Dev Meeting. Today is the 27th of April. First up on the, let me see, were there any action items from last time?
Yes, I think there was two items for me. So the first one was to find an easier way to track the changes that we've been doing, or the work we have carried out between these meetings. So I created a board, well, actually a board view that shows exactly, well, it doesn't show exactly that, but help us get that information. So basically it shows everything that is tagged as GA and it's been closed. So the ones on the top should be the ones that we worked, in the last week or so. Unfortunately, the GitHub board doesn't really allow us to filter by date. At least I couldn't find a way to do that. So the only thing you can see is actually just the items sorted. Another issue or another action was to create a self-assessment tracking issue for Flagger. So I created that as well. I think I tagged that, I put that on just below the actual items. I put both links there. So that should be there. Yeah.
Super. Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Paulo. The first item on the agenda is to review the current dev focus. Are there any?
Hey, before that,
sorry.
Wanted to ask Paulo if he can rebase his PR to become a Flux 2 maintainer. He's been there for 2 weeks. Everybody has approved it, so welcome, Paulo, as a Flux maintainer and the future oversight role as well. We'll talk about that later, about the changes to governance. But yes, please rebase it so I can merge it now.
I'll do that now. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for all the great things you've done in Flux since you joined us.
Yeah, excellent. Looking at the maintainers focus list, is there anything you would like to discuss for the upcoming release? Anything that is blocked right now or we need help?
I will just kind of give a bit of a brief. So there's quite a few things on the Git related stuff. So we'll be working on optimizing the Git clones. I have a PR that is actually kind of working now. And what it does, it kind of skips the clone operations when it sees that there's no point because there was no change in revision. There's still a few more things to improve on that, and we've got to put some more tests and so on. So we're not looking to merge that right now. And that should also help some of the problems we're having with SSH, because this will mean that we will open a connection to the servers, to the SSH or HTTP servers, for a short period of time as possible, especially with libgit2 and managed transport, which then, at least on my test, decreased as well the errors that we get. So that hopefully is coming soon. Quite a few of those things are now kind of paused a bit because of some of the Helm memory issues that we got reported. So some folks that were using version 21.1 of source controller, when they upgraded to version 24 or even 22, they noticed sometimes double the memory footprint, which is leading to all sorts of issues on their state. So we kind of focusing on that right now. I actually need to create an issue to track that, but basically if you check on the GA progress view of the board, you see that quite a few of the items that are related to Helm. And I think that would be key things I would like to highlight. Anyone else would like to highlight anything that we're focusing on or issues we might be experiencing?
I've been adding things to the GA milestones of each project. I'm not sure how those get into the project board. Are you adding them manually? Or?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, so you have to manually add them. Unfortunately, so there are workflows that allow you to automate some of this stuff, but the workflows are not very good at the moment. So you can't, for example, pick a few users and just say every time that they create an issue, every time they create a PR, bring to the board. Now you have to pretty much add every time. You just go to the board, and at the very bottom there's like a plus add item, and if you put either the URL of the issue or the PR, it will automatically go there. Another thing you can do is on the issue or PR, on the side there is a small part that says like project. If you just pick, then the project board, it will go there automatically as well. Does that make sense?
So let's take this pull request, for example.
Yeah, so
I'll give you a link once. So this is a security enhancements for multi-tenancy and not only. I've created a pull request. I've added to the GA milestone.
Yep.
Right, but now I want, for example, I don't want to merge this because we want to do a patch release of customized controller. I want to add this to the V030. So I can go to projects and type V030. No.
yeah, from the PR, you should be able to pick the project, and then there will be like more. And then from there, you can pick the version you want to target against, or the release.
So the only thing I can pick here on the pull request at the project is maintainers focus.
Yeah, so you pick that. Once you pick, there will be a plus at the bottom of that thing. If not, you have to refresh the page, but it should show the project, and then there will be like more fields or something like that. Let me see one that has, yeah, there will be plus
okay,
one.
plus one. Choose an option. Oh, okay, that's great. Okay,
Yeah.
So it's a two-step thing. You have to choose the main project, and then you can set everything else. Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, so it's not as user-friendly, but I think that he's still working on that. He's still on beta. But another way of doing that is copying and paste the URL, but probably doing like this is a lot easier anyway. So
yeah, for sure. And this information, if someone who is not in our organization and goes to this pull request, does it see it's part of the V030 release?
I'm not sure they can actually see that. So let me quickly check. No, on source. Well, they actually, yes, they can see that. Yeah.
Are you using incognito? Let me use incognito.
Yeah, I'm using incognito. So they can see everything. They can see the project, the milestone, and
they have to expand the project to actually see the release, but it's fine. Anyway, it's way better. I mean, people now can look at the pull request and see, oh, it's going to be in this release or whatever, which helps a lot because people keep asking us, when will this be released or whatever. So now we can just tell them, click on the project link.
And you should get that information. Yeah, that makes sense.
Nice. Another question. can people which are not in the Flux organization see the project board even if it's a beta feature?
Yeah, I think the board is public, so anyone can access it.
I guess they have to enable project beta in their GitHub account.
No, it's pretty
No?
much open. If you have the link, you just go straight to it. Or otherwise, I think you need to go to the org level and then projects, maybe.
No,
Yeah.
just the link
Yes, it's a dog level. Yeah. It's a dog level.
Yeah,
Let
that's
me try incognito again. See what's happening. Oh, so you don't need to have a GitHub user to see it, which is perfect. Yeah, this is a Jira killer.
it's coming. To be honest, the board is.
Atlassian killed themselves. Like they went down for like what, 2 weeks or something. Did that incident get resolved where they like they weren't able to do batch restores? Like everything went down for like a week or two.
But yeah, I definitely think that this is gonna be quite tough because most engineers I know hate Jira anyway. So, and this one people don't really mind, do they? Well, at least I haven't heard many complaints. But cool. Anything else, guys?
Yeah, I had a question about the Git clone operations. So like the PR that you have opened right now, that only basically short circuits the Git clone for libgit to manage, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it still needs so that's not possible to do it without the managed transport, is it? Or is it possible?
Oh wait, sorry. So you mean because I have two PRs open. So one is about optimizing the operation. So we skip.
I don't mean caching the connections. I meant where we take a look at basically fetch the index and take a look at the commit, and then according to that we decide whether we need to do a clone or not.
Yeah, so that one should work in both managed and unmanaged because we do at a higher level. We don't do that at transport level. But one thing that I'm testing on my local, which actually has been working really, really well, is once this is enabled, I stop completely the long-running connections. Because at the moment, what we're doing is create a connection and reuse this for as long as it works. Once it starts scaling, we kind of create a new one. But now that the connections are really quick, we can just have a single use connections, and yeah, it seems to work quite fine. So I'll put a PR, I'll put a commit on that to that effect, hopefully tomorrow.
I was wondering if it would be helpful if we, instead of using long running connections, so like basically use the same connection until it gets invalidated somehow, we have like a TTL for each connection where we just expire the connection if the time expires. Yeah,
so there is a few challenges on that. The first one is some Git service providers just don't accept any sort of reuse. So I think Git bucket was one of those. So every time it just considers us stale, and then we recreate, which means we kind of trying two operations. The second problem is when you're sharing the connection across concurrent reconciliations, like for example, you have different workers, both workers are reconciling at the same time against the same server. It is quite challenging for you to say that connection is not being used. So you can't really disconnect it because you might kill, the concurrent worker. So what I've done on that perspective is I had to keep track of how many people are using or how many processes are using that connection. And if there are more folks using it, I remove from the cache and I do a go routine to kind of disconnect it after. But to be completely honest, I think if we can get away with all that logic, we're probably better off. So yeah, I'll share the PR, the committee that I was talking about, and then we can see how we can improve that and if that works for all the different scenarios.
Cool. Yeah, and like we still haven't gotten around to short circuiting clone operations for GoGet, right? That still needs to be done.
Yes, I think some Tochi is working on that. If that it's correct, I think she mentioned she would look into that.
Yeah, because I was looking into it as well, and I was looking into seeing how we could reuse SSH connections with GoGet as well. But we discussed last week that maybe it's not really required. Like it's not like something which is explicitly required.
Well, so it would be great if we had tests, for example, to that effect.
Yeah.
All the changes that you've done on Git test, Git test server. So if we could, with tests, prove that there is a problem, and then we can kind of mitigate that, then that would make sense. But from the small tests that I've done and some tests that Suntochi did as well, it doesn't seem like it's as much of a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. I think that is that from current developments.
Okay. Anything else? Or shall we move on to GA? I think, Stefan, you mentioned you had added a couple of issues to the GA board. Do you want to say a few words about this?
Yes, so recently we've worked on implementing a custom file system for customize and for building customized overlays. And the reason for that is for Flux to have control over which resources are included in the build operation. Where are those manifests coming from and so on. And so we did that at in the last release in 0.29. And now for 0.30, the next minor release, we are introducing a flag where platform admins can disable customized remote bases. And why is this marked as, say, on a road to GA is because right now, if you are a platform admin, you onboard tenants, you expect that you as the platform admin can easily see and control which sources, which Git repositories, which container repositories, which Helm repositories, and so on, make up your cluster desired state. But there is a escape hatch to this. Customize allows people to place in a customization.yaml in an overlay in Git a reference to some other Git repos or even random files over the internet that are served over HTTP or HTTPS. While this is a nice thing to have in Customize, it poses a lot of security issues. We, for example, show platform admins how they can use Kyverno or Gatekeeper to create policies around Flux sources. So you can say, I don't want to allow tenants or anybody on this cluster to register sources outside this particular GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket or whatever organization. So you can limit the Flux sources to a particular organization, which is great. But then anyone could place a customization.yaml in their repo, and there under resources, they will say github.com fluxcd.io flux2 give me this directory, apply it on the cluster. right? And customized controller, what it does, it uses the customized default build package, and that one execs to the Git CLI from the Alpine image, clones the repo, and applies it on the cluster, which in a way bypasses all the things that platform admins would expect to be able to enforce, right? So we are now introducing a flag called no remote basis. Platform admins, when they bootstrap Flux, when they install Flux or later on upgrade it, they can enable this flag, they can set it to true. And from that moment on, any tenant that has resources coming from a remote basis, they will no longer work. Customized controller will error out and say, hey, I cannot import this external resource. And I think this is a critical feature that we are missing and must be implemented before GA to give platform admins this kind of power over the cluster that they are managing. So that's the main reason I've tagged this as GA. So yeah, that will come very soon in the next minor release.
Super. Any questions or any other points for GA?
So it's not only remote bases, it's any remote references we're talking about, right? That would all be disabled in the customization.yaml, even if they're under the resources section instead of the bases.
Basis is deprecated since 2 years now. No one should be using
it's all resources. Okay.
Everything that doesn't reference a local file from the Flux source artifact will be denied. Doesn't matter if it's on HTTP, HTTPS, SSH, Git protocol, whatever. If it comes from other places than a Flux source, that will no longer work. If you enable the flag, of course, we are not going to break everyone's setup by enabling this flag by default. I don't know, if you trust your tenants, there is no reason to disable this. But anyway, we should write a blog post at some point. Maybe Daniel should add that to, I don't know, a to-do list or something, and explain why Flux users should move away from remote bases. And it's not only about security. If you trust your tenants, you should tell your tenants, don't use remote bases. And the main reason is that Customize has no caching mechanism. Every time Flux does a customization reconciliation, it will clone, download all these manifests every single time, right? So if you have like a bunch of manifests that are coming, let's say from 10 Git repos, every time it will do an egress call, it will go out of the cluster to GitLab, GitHub, or whatever, do a Git clone, download the whole history of the Git repo just to take a couple of files, right? So if you rely on Flux sources, then you have internal cluster caching. It doesn't matter if GitHub goes down for half an hour. The reconciliation will not fail because it will use the artifact cache. You can do PGP signing verification. You can do so many things if you use Flux sources. If you use customized remote bases, you'll definitely see a performance degrading on that. And it's about networking. It's about the file system. You download so many things inside the controller temp file system that is not meant for that. The customized controller is meant to apply resources. It's not meant to fetch resources. So yeah, we need to write a blog post and tell people about when to use them, how to choose between them, and encourage them to migrate to Flux source API if they can.
Super, good thinking.
That covered everything I was looking for. Thank you.
Sweet, yeah, let's move on to Flux Graduation. I'm sure all of you know already, but people watching the video later on might not. We met with the TOC last week, I think it was, or in their last meeting at least. And they reviewed our application for Flux to be graduated. A number of questions came up, and thanks to you all for helping answer them. I placed a link in the agenda doc. I'll share it here as well. So we answered all the questions that were very quick to answer in the PR itself. And Dim's already, I forgot his real name, but Dim's already said he's going to check into that. A bigger piece of work is, reviewing our governance structure. So one piece of feedback that didn't really come as a big surprise was that we should overhaul and look at our oversight committee again. That was introduced a long time ago, and the people on there aren't exactly voted in. They were just placed there as a bootstrap kind of committee, and we sort of promised during incubation that we would do something about it or put more people on the oversight committee. And after some debate internally and also with the contributor strategy people at the CNCF, we came up with the idea to sort of replace the oversight committee with Flux 2 maintainers. And I also, reworked some of the governance pieces as per their suggestions. So they, so for example, from me to you, this is like a call for review. And if you have like other ideas, let me know. I'm happy to factor all of them in. I know it's going to be a little bit of a process. I was looking for a simple solution. And what else changed was I wanted to also have the governance doc short. Like we used to have some process information in there, for example, like how to apply as a maintainer. And, if we change that procedure, we always need to have like, a big vote. Do we want to change the governance? So let's move all the process bits into a separate doc. That was another thing I did. There were some recommendations from the governance working group around how to deal with code of conduct violations, to mention team meetings, to have like clearer rules, like what makes somebody like a good maintainer. So they suggested we sort of spell out what significant and sustained contributions means. So for example, say like at least this many PRs, or this many, non-trivial code reviews or whatever, just to give people a rough idea of how much work to put into and how many months to have spent working on Flux. So we're less prone to favoritism. And I think that's mostly it. It looks like a big PR, but I tried to keep the commits logical. And as I said, like any reviews, any feedback will be much appreciated, so we can move this forward and keep responding to the TOC quickly. Any questions? I really liked that they had put together like a a template for the governance doc, so I was able to copy a couple of pieces from there, which was nice. Okay, Paulo, do you maybe want to say a few words about your conversations with the security tag? Because that was another piece of work where the TOC suggested we reach out and get in touch with them.
Yeah, sure. So basically, the idea is to go through the CNCF tag security. I think the name now is joint review. So I kicked off that process. I think there is a link. Yeah, you had the link there already. And how this process works is we have to do a self-assessment in which we highlight, the attack surface, key security features, and key points of worry from our side. We also give some context about the project, and then someone within the CNCF tag security will be assigned to help us through the process to understand a bit more about what we proposing to be security reviewed, and then they will work with us to do threat modeling and make sure that the project is as secure as it should be. So we started the process. I started the self-assessment as well, got some nice reviews on it. I still haven't finished that yet. I'm planning to finish that by Friday. These self-assessments are not meant to be really deep, but I'm trying to add as much context as possible, so it's easier for people to jump in and out and kind of understand what we're talking about when it comes down to the scope of this security assessment, which is, and I probably should have said that in the beginning, is just about the Flux multi-tenancy. And that's it. I noticed that someone from the tag security tagged someone else on the issue, but I don't think we have yet got someone assigned to it. But as soon as we do, I will I'll give the heads up to everyone here.
Super. Thanks a lot for that. I think it's going to be important when we next talk to the TOC that we sort of set expectations. I think the ask initially was that because when we did the security audit was from the auditors that we work with security people to have like good RFCs written, which have like the proper language and everything. And that we sort of say to the TOC, okay, we're working with the security team now to have like firm and proper post-GA plans, and that they shouldn't block the graduation on this because it's going to take quite a while. It just wouldn't be fair. Cool. Any question or feedback? Okay. Yeah, then I have another.
I had one.
Oh yeah, please do.
Yeah, I was wondering, even so we're doing the same thing for Flagger as well, like with the self-security assessment. So I was basically trying to ask, should we open another issue or should we just submit the document in the same issue, like include it in the same review process? Because the document is almost ready, like there's a few final touches to do put here and there, but it's pretty much ready.
I think we could put it on the same ticket, to be honest. I'm not sure it's the same context that people would need. But yeah, we could use the same issue we have already there. Flagger is part of Flux anyway, so I'll just add
let's add it there.
Yeah, I'll just add it as another sub repository, and then we just link the other self-assessment. Yeah, that should be fine.
Yeah, thanks a lot for putting all of that together. When I looked at the security self-assessment, I don't know, half a year ago, I quickly left the work again and went to do other things because it was, at least for me, it was quite involved. I didn't have answers to all of the questions. Cool. Next week, I want to get out the monthly update. In the agenda doc, there's a link to the draft. So if you have anything newsworthy, anything you would like to highlight, even if you can just place a link to a PR there, or some Slack discussion, please add, and I'll make sure to write something about it. Paolo, you have the Helm memory regression listed here.
Yeah, so I kind of briefly talked about that before. Yeah, I probably shouldn't, but yeah, it's just I just wanted to highlight the URLs for the pull request there, so people have access to it. But yeah, this should already have an improvement from our tests. It improved about 20% in terms of total memory footprint, and there was, I think, 30% on objects hanging in memory, and also hopefully this would be positive for everybody.
Did you get any answer, any feedback from the end user regarding the memory?
Well, yes and no. So initially, yes, and it was really positive. And 24 hours later, they reported that they still experiencing some issues. So yeah, I'm doing some investigation now. I found a few potential ways that we could optimize the whole thing, but let me try to get something running, and then I share with this group.
Thanks.
Excellent. Suley, you have an agenda item here, the Helm OCI support.
Yeah, I just wanted to say was to let people know that there is a draft pull request regarding the implementation of the FC2 of Helm OCI support. So it would be nice for people to review it, let us know what they think about it, even though it's still a draft. We made some assumptions regarding the reconciler contract. For example, now we don't store any artifact with the Helm repository OCI type. Another thing is that with the first implementation, we won't be supporting custom certificates because this is not something that is supported on the OS client side. I have talked with people from with Helm maintainers and OS maintainers, and they are open to supporting it. And it will be done maybe in a month or so, and then we will be able to implement it on our side. I don't know, Max, if you want to say anything.
No, just yeah, I added. Oh, did I comment on the PR or the slide? I'm not sure. Maybe I'll add it to the PR as well. That I'm kind of on the fence between or on the issue of making the OCI code part of the existing controllers and the builder, for example, and have conditionals in there, or make it more separate so it's easier to reason about either of, like HTTP repository reconciliation or an OCI repository or registry. But for now, it looks like we didn't have, like the overlap between the OCI part and the HTTP part is pretty big. So we chose to reuse most of what's there and just added some conditionals, right? So it says like, if this is an OCI registry, build the chart like this and that, or download the chart like this and that, and the rest stays the same. However, now like this obviously makes the code a little bigger and harder to reason about, right? So that's kind of a compromise we have to think about here.
To be a bit more specific, on the Helm repository reconciler, we have now 2 reconcilers, but on the Helm chart reconciler, we try to use the same one because we have this remote builder. We try to reuse the code.
Yeah, so basically we reuse all that logic of swapping the default value with another file from inside the chart and so on, right?
Yeah, all the building packaging we reuse, but then we introduce a new repository type, repository share, and we use an interface to pass it to the builder so you can do the downloading of the chart from a Helm repository or an OCI repository.
Yeah, I think the two implementations will diverge in the future if we add verification. For example, while you would sign a Helm chart in an HTTP repo with PGP, for OCI, you'll probably use cosign. So there will be like two separate things. But maybe those can be in our internal packages separated there and just, you know, call them in a switch inside the same reconciler. Yeah, who knows what future presents. It's also about what Helm will do in the future, if they will maintain the HTTPS, the HTTP repos, and or add features only to OCI and stuff like that. So we can always split them in the future. So I think if now it's easier to keep the code in the same reconciler and reuse all the tests and so on, I think we should do that. And let's revisit it once we implement signature verifications and see there maybe we need to split it or not and so on.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
thanks.
Thanks for the feedback.
Also, I have a question regarding the other RFC on the planned Kubernetes manifest. Is while it's still in draft, what are you supposed to do to have more people review it and approve? Because the people from VMware, they made a lot of comments and you addressed those, and I think they're okay with it now. Are you still planning to work on it once it is approved? Do you know anything about that?
We have some blockers there. For example, the feedback is we should add service account name to the OCI repository to mimic what Kubelet does. So you create a service account, then you can add pull secrets attached to that service account. And the Google Container Registry project has a dedicated package for dealing with all of that. So you just call their authentication package, you'll give it the service name, and it knows how to fetch the secret and so on. So it's convenient in a way to have that because, you know, we don't have to implement it from scratch. You can just reuse that package. But on the other side, we will diverge from the image repository for container updates, for tag updates, right? So
you want to implement it there first?
Yeah, I think we need to keep the two perfectly in sync, because I envision at some point we'll get rid of image repository altogether and move the cache to source controller for the tags. Why I'm saying this, because once we have to do signature verification for OCI, then we'll have to get all the tags. We need to identify the tags which are the signature. So if we already get all that information, it doesn't make much sense to me to keep two controllers with the same cache, with the same information in the cluster, right? So my approach to this is get that RFC in a shape where it's a one-on-one with the image repository. So in the future, we may have another RFC where we say, hey, we are going to merge the two. Source control will treat the list of tags as an artifact for the OCI repository, right? And that's the artifact, are all the lists of tags, signatures, and based on that can the verification. So yeah, I didn't see any movement there. Yeah, maybe someone else should take on the service account name addition to image repository so we can move forward with that RFC. So let me explain a little bit the RFC process. So when you open an RFC, it's always on draft. You gather feedback. Once you address all the feedback, or if there are no blockers, then the sponsor of that RFC assigns an RFC number. And only when you have the number, you will move the PR from draft to ready. So the fact that it's in draft is not that no one can comment on it or feedback. It's the exact opposite. We want as much feedback as possible while the pull request is in draft. But you are right, we are kind of stuck there. We need to post on Twitter or something, get more people giving us some feedback there, also from other Flux maintainers which are not on this meeting.
I also think we don't want to lose the people from VMware, because I guess it's valuable to have them contribute to Flux.
Yeah, we can do the image repository on our own, then ask them if they can help out with source controller. But anyway, my plan is to get the Helm OCI support in shape merge ready and not block on the OCI for Kubernetes manifest and have that released, because like all Flux users want that. Only a couple of Flux users envision how they will switch from Git repos to OCI repos. But for Helm, it's GA and everybody wants it. And it actually solves some major bottlenecks with dealing with Helm repositories, huge index files, and so on. So yeah, let's focus on getting the Helm OCI support merged and released. Around the end-to-end tests. So I've also wrote on the issue that I've created a repo on GitHub for podinfo. So podinfo now is used to test the end-to-end for Helm charts with Helm repositories. And now I made available an OCI repository with the same charts, right? So that can be used in the same way we are using the HTTP repository. We can now use the OCI repository. It just has a different URL, and I've added it in on that issue. So Max, Soleil, when you get to the end-to-end test, we definitely need end-to-end tests for that. It's not going to be much without.
We actually have that as a task on the PR.
Great.
It's still to be done.
Cool, yes.
I had a question about the Helm OCI PR. Are we planning to tackle like cosign verification in this PR, or will that be like a different task and handled in a different PR?
The RFC has no such thing. We are implementing the RFC. So there is no signing verification in the RFC. We have to figure out first your pull request that adds PGP signing verification. Get that into shape, and only then implement cosign afterwards.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because if we were going to add, then we would need to take that into consideration as well.
Yes, PGP should go first anyway, because it's almost there, right? But yeah, I don't see signing verification as a blocker to GA. Cosign is still very new, early. The keyless verification is still alpha. You need to enable it through a flag. I'm not sure how many people are using it. Also, taking cosign as a dependency in Flux, it's is going to be tough. Like cosign imports like half the internet. They import all the cloud SDKs, all the HashiCorp SDKs, like everything that's there that touches security, it's in cosign. And I'm really scared about depending on cosign in Flux. It will be really tough on us because let's say we need to patch something on SOAPs, which depends on some cloud SDK, right? We bump the version, then if cosign doesn't, the same stuff will not be able to release it because it will conflict with that. So any breaking change in any cloud SDK, once we add cosign, will give us in a deadlock situation where we cannot update, we cannot downgrade, we depend on SOAPs being on the same dependency version as cosign. And we've been there with Helm before, and it's really, really tough to manage all this stuff. Also, cosign depends also on Kubernetes. I don't know why, but they do. So we need to take a closer look at what it means to integrate with them, but not now. So later on.
Max, do you want to read your question out loud? Do you want to discuss it now?
Yeah, I just finished typing when Stefan finished talking. I don't know, it's just spitballing, but would it make sense then to have cosine live like in a separate controller? I mean, we don't get the benefit of being able to call into the cosine library then, but maybe just have a controller that does verification and everything, that consists kind of the same objects.
Well, an artifact shouldn't be available if the signature is not there. So that's impossible to do it in another place.
I see.
Like PGP, you download something, you verify it, then you expose it inside the cluster. You cannot expose it for other controller to verify it because other controllers will already apply it and so on. Right, so we either
okay, so they would have to check the status, right? If it was different, like if the artifact was there but just not verified, you would have to add a condition or something like that.
Yeah, then two controllers will fight over the same status of an object. It's really tricky. I would not do that.
Fair enough.
It's we probably have to change the whole philosophy of Flux version 2 if we want to have multiple controllers managing the same custom resource, right? We need to come up with some I don't know, some sort of gatekeeping mechanism like the CAPI controllers have, where in CAPI everything is like multiple controllers can work on the same custom resource, and you have a bunch of things around that reconciliation process. It becomes way more complicated than what we are doing today. In our world, everything is simple, like a custom resource is always managed by a single controller, right? And that one has leader election. There will be at no time two controller or two instances will patch the same status object, right? And that gives you, let's say, an assurance that whatever is there written in the status is the last known thing, and you don't have to refetch it every time. But once multiple processes are allowed to write there, we need the locking mechanism in place, like Helm does. And when a controller crashes for some reason, the lock is there, so we have to deal with how we unlock things. So yeah, it's complicated, and I don't want to think about that right now. It has many implications, but yeah, who knows in the future. I'm hoping we can get some things out of cosign without having to depend on everything here. Like I'm looking at their Go mode and it's all Kubernetes in here or HashiCorp, everything. So yeah.
Okay, we're running up to the hour now. Sanskar, was your question around the Flagger security self-assessment sufficiently answered?
Yeah, it has been.
Super. Any last words? In that case, thanks a lot, everyone.
Nice seeing you.
See you on Slack. Take care.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.